Well, hello, everyone. I'm Donna Merck, Director of the South Dakota Art Museum, and welcome to tonight's cocktail hour chat tonight. On the call tonight are also several of the museum's exceptional staff members, Jody Lundgren, Curator of Exhibitions, Taylor McEwen, Curator of Collections, and Carolyn Hart, Coordinator of Marketing and Membership, who is thankfully working the tech tonight and watching the staff. Watching the chats. Staff, please give a wave. Pam Adler, Museum Store Manager, is joining us from Facebook. Tonight's program is made possible through your gifts and membership dues, which directly fund museum exhibitions and programs. Thank you. Shortly, we'll learn more about artworks from the museum's current exhibition, Recent Acquisitions 2016 to 2021. The museum is able to acquire art for the collection because of the generosity of many artists who donate art and donors who donate art and funds for the acquisitions, including the Museum Guild. So let's take a moment to honor those donors. Carolyn, can you roll the video? Thanks so much, Carolyn. We are so excited that many of the artists and donors that made this exhibition possible are on the chat with us tonight. So on behalf of South Dakota Art Museum staff and board and our parent organization, South Dakota State University, thank you all so much for your support. We're going to start the program with a talk by Sheila Agee, Chair of the Museum's Collections and Acquisitions Committee, followed by a Q&A with Sheila and curators Jody and Taylor. So if you have questions at any time, you can type them into the chat or you may ask them directly during the Q&A. So though Sheila now volunteers for South Dakota Art Museum Board of Advisors, she was once a member of the staff, previously serving as assistant to the director for 7 years. As an Arkansas native, raised in Aberdeen, Sheila returned to South Dakota after completing her MFA in painting and drawing at the University of Oregon to pursue a career in museum administration. Before retiring, Sheila also worked as executive director for the Civic Fine Arts Center and in leadership positions for the South Dakota Symphony and Washington Pavilion. Further, an accomplished visual artist, Sheila has exhibited throughout the Midwest and beyond and serves as a teacher and mentor to many artists. Working out of her Hilltop studio in Brandon, South Dakota, Sheila paints nature, capturing South Dakota skies, prairies, animals, and plants. Thank you so much, Sheila, for being here with us tonight. We're so grateful to have you on our board, and we are honored that you are here to share with us tonight. So we're going to bring up Sheila's PowerPoint presentation now and get started.
Thank you for that gracious introduction. I also should say, and welcome to South Dakota. For those who aren't familiar, that you are a new executive director. And we're anxious and waiting to see what kind of a footprint you get to put on the institution.
Thanks so much, Sheila.
You bet.
Great to be here.
So I want to thank everybody for joining us for this delightful notion of having fun with enjoying art and cocktails at the same time. Let's see how far we can get before the bar closes. The slideshow is going to pop up here shortly, and we're going to start going on. And the reason I got all the staff here tonight is because they don't quite trust that I won't go off the wires and start telling stories that just like aren't true. And wow, there's so many people involved tonight that I guess I really can't go off the wire. I remember I was doing a little tour once for the what do they call it, the classes for elder people, the Ollie classes. I was doing a little tour once for Ollie classes of at Mary and Jerome Freeman's house, and guiding people through their house, and I had just gone on a little bit about Oscar Howe, and I remember after I said something, I said, "Now wait a minute, Sheila, was that true? Let me think." And just as I said that to myself, lightning struck the house and blew all the power out. And I thought, well, I better check that fact out. So hopefully we won't have that kind of a introduction tonight. Can you slip on to the next slide, please? I feel like I'm back in my college days when I was assisting the professor, and he'd always say, "Next." We're going to have to do that tonight, just because I'm halfway there as far as knowing what's going on in the computer world. Jody said it well in the booklet provided for the visiting visitors going through the recent acquisitions 2016-21 exhibition. And that little brochure, which is a handy little thing, it's if you get a chance, make sure you pick one up. But she states that, and this pretty much discusses or points out the mission and process of the museum. The museum collects, preserves, exhibits, and interprets visual arts to provide access and education, and to encourage, stimulate, and support appreciation of the visual arts for the people of South Dakota and its visitors. I don't know if you can say it much better than that. The museum preserves artwork of aesthetic, cultural, and historical significance to South Dakotans. So these artworks will be available for the enjoyment of future as well as current generations. The more than 7,000 objects acquired over its 50-year history, and the center opened in 1970, speaks to the museum's rich collecting history. And tonight you're going to see some examples of what that's all about. There are a couple other lines in Jody's, and I'm talking about Jody Lundgren, exhibition curator, put in the brochure for the exhibition that I just love. She states, "The collection is a living work of art itself, a dynamic and growing network of intersections between objects, people, cultures, places, and time periods." I mean, that's just wonderful. The collection is a living work of art itself. Then she also says each artwork's relevance and significance shifts over time. And that is so true. She has proven that over and over in how they use the works in different exhibitions. She says each work informs the other when it joins the collection, creating new relationships and intersections. Oh my goodness, the visual I can create in my head of each work informs the other when it joins the collections. Those are just wonderful, wonderful paragraphs, Jody, and I thank you for that. And that's all, and that pretty much says it all. That's the understanding we must have when we're sitting in a collection committee meeting and are discussing an object for consideration. I feel the deep sense of responsibility the museum has for knowing our artists and knowing what they are doing, saying, and experiencing in their process of making art. Don't misunderstand, though, that statement isn't the end all. The collection committee isn't the end all to the objects being acquired in the collection. The process is involve an extensive multi-layers. It starts with the proposed acquisition, which is vetted by the museum staff for its quality, significance, and relevance. And that's a good place to start because the staff knows the collection the best and they can see ways of using a work. It is then reviewed by the museum's collection committee, who passes the results of their recommendation to the museum's advisory board for final consideration. The advisory board reviews the committee's recommendation and then makes the final decision. Multi-layers. And it goes on for months. It's not just a one-time deal. Acquisitions can come in many ways. And that was sort of addressed in the beginning through purchases from exhibitions or auctions, transfers from other institutions, gifts by artists, gifts by family, gifts by foundations and organizations, and fundraising campaigns to address a certain opportunity. And you'll see examples of those as I go through this exhibition. I must point out another well-written statement in the brochure. Sorry, Jody, picking on you tonight. The many people that helped create, support, and shape the museum's collection throughout its history are embedded in it as well. Isn't that just wonderful? The donors, the artists, everybody involved in all the ways that works get into the center are embedded in it as well. They're alive in the artworks they help to preserve for the benefit of the public. We thank them. We thank them for all they've done to help the museum build such an impressive and well-preserved collection. The exhibition and the slide that you're seeing now is a one-shot, one-angle slide of the gallery. The exhibition consists of 52 works by 33 artists coming from 24 different donation sources. And I'll have to ask Jody or Taylor, I failed to do that, but these aren't all the works that were collected in 2016 to 21. These are the works that they pieced together to put together for this particular gallery. I will walk you through the parts, pardon me?
Correct.
Correct, all right. I will walk you through the parts of the exhibition and hopefully give you a feel for the gratitude we have for the new works that you're about to see. And of course, there is no way I will be able to get through all the pieces of this show, but hopefully you'll get enough information to encourage you to come and to visit the museum. Because in addition to this exhibition, there is the All Done show and the Margab, and I'll let Jody go on to list all the exhibits for you. So it always starts at an entrance, right? The entrance to an exhibition. And we all approach that entrance with our own tools. I always say we bring our own suitcase in. Viewing art is one of those moments when you bring your own experience to a piece of work or an exhibition, and sometimes you have to sort through all your own information before you can let in the new material. Finally getting to that question of, what is the artist saying? And you almost have to train yourself to do this. And once you do that, you can actually enjoy exhibitions more than just walking through and never clearing your head and still thinking about your lunch. As I stand in the entrance, my eyes will dance across a gallery. Usually I ask myself, where do I start? And sometimes there is a beginning and an end, but not always. And the acquisition show exhibition can be difficult because they are so different in objects and color and style, size, texture, medium, shapes, and the stories that come with them. So an example of the differences that the difficulties that can make a show, particularly this show, is that this show consists of paintings and prints and photographs, ceramics, beadwork, mixed mediums, and fiber arts. And then you mix that in with the works that were acquired over from 2016 to 21, but the creations of the pieces range from 1899 to 2019. This exhibition is an example of the various sources of donations and ways that the pieces were brought in either by purchase or gifts. So when you keep that all in mind, you understand the difficulties that a curator such as Jody has in putting together a piece that is handsome and welcoming to go into. And I didn't take the opportunity, I wanted to take the opportunity to do some slides of certain corners or segments, because she did some wonderful gatherings of pieces that help you flow from this is a color relationship to the color relation to a landscape to a landscape. So you did a remarkable job. And the other thing is, you want to keep in mind that this is just the beginning of what you're going to learn about these pieces, because these are all new acquisitions. The best part's yet to come, because between Taylor and Jody, the stories are going to be put together, and these pieces will appear in exhibitions in the future. I think that we'll move on to the first slide. Is Dr. Don't put it on this. All right, I'm going to just move on here. Start with what caught my eye first in the exhibition. Can you go back just 1 second? Now, this isn't the test to see how well this works. Can we go back a second? Yeah, if you look straight ahead at the Dunn, which is the reclining nude in that slide, you'll see a display case in front of it and a little bag there. That's the piece that we're going to be discussing. So that's what attracted my eye when I stood there in the gallery, and I just love Native American beadwork, particularly the early pieces, and it's just always so fascinating. And so that I immediately drew to the center of the gallery. So this is an unknown artist, Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. It's called a document bag, 1899. It's circa 1899, estimated. And it's a gift of Kathy and Ken Vogeley collection. Much is yet to be learned about this piece. The beads, hide, horsehair, the design, the sinew, give the curators a good place to start. And particularly the beads alone can help estimate the dates. The little red rose hip beads with the little white linings inside, I believe were made in Italy in the 1890s period. Don't hold me to that. But Kathy and Ken Vogeley, the donors to this collection, will be able to assist a bit with the history as they developed all these pieces or register all these pieces into the collection. The Vogeleys are amazing in the way that they have built a working relationship with tribal artists in our region for over 4 decades. But my favorite part of their story isn't that Kathy's opening of the teepee shop or the Sioux trading post, or even the many connections she created from the museum shops to artists, which would be just like a wonderful resource for any artist. So that's just the valuable thing that was happening in the Vogeleys period of their stores, or of Kathy's store. Sorry, Ken, I don't know if you were involved. My favorite part of their story, though, is that the Vogeleys recognized the way the South Dakota Art Museum treated the Native American objects as works of art. This led to a long and successful relationship, which the museum is now in the process of processing 108 new pieces to be added to the collection. So that's where we want to start. From there, we're going to move on to the South Dakota's known by most artist, Harvey Dunn. The reclining nude with floral curtain. There's no date on this piece. It's a gift of the Kelly Collection of American Illustration. Most of you probably know this story of Dunn, but I'll run through it quickly for those who don't. Dunn was born in 1884 near Manchester, South Dakota, which isn't far from us all, here in the South Dakota Sioux Falls area. And in 1901, he entered South Dakota Agricultural College as a preparatory student. Now, my favorite part about this is he was a student of Ada Caldwell, and this is the threads. I'm going to try to create threads that connect pieces as we go through. He was a student of Ada Caldwell, and it was Ada Caldwell who encouraged him to further his education at the Art Institute in Chicago, where he met Howard Pyle, America's foremost illustrator. And then after 2 years in Chicago, Dunn opened his studio in Delaware in 1906. He quickly became a leading illustrator, working for all the major magazines at the time. By 1915, Dunn and a fellow artist, Charles Chapman, established their own school of illustration. But then Dunn's career was interrupted when he was chosen to be an artist for the American Expeditionary Force, recording the gruesome realities of the war. And I say his career was interrupted because his career, sorry, that was my mother. His career was interrupted as far as being a professional illustrator. But I think that the war paintings are so wonderful when you get a chance to see these paintings because they're handled in a whole different way than the Dunn paintings, and I actually find them so very handsome. So surely it was a learning technique, a great skill that he had picked up, and how to pick up the moment, of painting those tragedies. After the war, he turned to his career as an illustrator and teacher, but Dunn started to return on a more regular basis to the South Dakota's prairies in the summer, capturing the images of the prairie and the pioneer heritage of his homeland that most people around here know him the best for. At the time of the museum's opening, and it's either 49 or 50, somewhere there, someone can correct me, works that were donated by Dunn through the Federated Women's Club. So in 1970, the Art Center of the museum, started with a nice collection of Harvey Dunn's pieces. This gift from the Kelly Collection of American Illustration is a private collection dedicated to the acquisition, preservation, and research of exhibitions of Golden Age American illustrations. And they focus from a period of 1890 to 1935. We've collaborated, the museum has collaborated with Richard Kelly in the past with exhibitions, and again in the recognition of the professional handling of the collections, the museum has been rewarded. They were impressed with our staff and how we handle things. There are several categories. I'm going to move on. There are several categories that we can place Dunn's works into, and the recent All Dunn exhibition does it all for us. Women figure studies, nudes, landscapes, sketches and woodcuts, portraits, war works, illustrations, prairie scenes. As a painter myself, I find Dunn's studio's studies of nudes refreshing. I think this piece is particularly handsome. It's Dunn's loose handling of the brush strokes. It plays the warm and cool colors across her body and throughout the painting. The indication of a flower curtain, but not stated because it just wasn't important. It all makes it just I think a wonderful painting, and I'm really happy that we've acquired this piece. A fun tidbit: years back when Joe Stewart was still the director of the Art Center, we had a visit from May Street, and May Street was one of Dunn's models. And there's a piece that they have hanging right now in the gallery that has May Street in it. I'm not sure if this is May Street or not. Okay, we're going to move on. Can't miss the opportunity to say it out loud again. Dunn was a student of Ada Caldwell. So this Ada Caldwell piece was donated to us as a gift from the Lindahl family, Serpent Lake, Minnesota. It's untitled. Ada Bushnell Lindahl studied art under Ada Caldwell. and hosted Caldwell at her family home on Serpent Lake, Minnesota in the 1930s. A fun fact, the town of Bushnell was named after Edna's family. Caldwell was an artist and professor. She played an important role at South Dakota State University. She led the art department from 1899 to 1939, which was where Harvey Dunn began his training. The South Dakota Art Museum houses 37 of Caldwell's works. I find it fascinating how Ada Caldwell, Myra Miller, Grace French, and some of those early women painters found the power to get it done back in that period, at a time when life wasn't as easy as it is now. In 2015, the South Dakota Art Museum received a grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Services for $22,000 to treat 9 of Caldwell's works that needed conservation treatment. This painting was descended from in the family and then was donated to the collection in 2019. So going to the next piece, Caldwell studied under Birger Sanseen. Sanseen's Blue Valley Farm is a linocut made in 1929. Sanseen, a known painter and printmaker, was a mentor of Caldwell. He had exhibited extensively throughout the United States, and his homeland was Sweden. Caldwell studied painting under Sanseen in Colorado, and then printmaking at Bethany College in Lynchburg, Kansas, where Sanseen was a long-time professor. This print is dedicated, this is one of those fun things that curators get to know and the rest of us probably don't get to see. This print is dedicated to Caldwell in the margins, and remained in the collection of South Dakota State University School of Design until it was donated to the museum in 2017. Okay, we're going to move on then. Also, another artist well known from South Dakota, nationally known, is Oscar Howe. Oscar Howe's Buffalo Hunt, Casing on Paper. This is a gift of Doctors Eric and Ruth Brown in memory of Donna Brown. Howe was born on the Crow Creek Reservation. At the age of 7, was sent to the Pierre Indian boarding school ran by the BIA. In 1938, he was 23 years old, I think, at the time. He graduated from the Santa Fe Indian School, where he was encouraged to use his Indian culture to inspire his work. Now, we could go into great detail here and talk a little bit about that Santa Fe Indian style, which ultimately ended up creating a stylized version of Native American art. But Howe broke from that, breaking from the Santa Fe style. Howe developed his own modernist painting style, but faithfully always using his Dakota heritage in the subject matter. Howe played a strong role in encouraging and then young contemporary Native American artists to break free from the stereotype of that constraints of that Santa Fe style and making Indian art. So he did a lot. He did a lot for the transformation of what Indian art was expected to be, to letting it speak out in their own voice, but still using their own heritage. This work was purchased from the artist by Donna Brown and later gifted to Eric and Ruth Brown. Donna Brown passed away by 1996. She was a Huron resident in the South Dakota Hall of Fame, was with accomplishments too long to be listed here today. You must know she was passionate about education. For over 40 years, she was in education and counseling education and developing educational programs, supporting new business developments and encouraging Native American artists. Although involved before the 1970s, Donna Brown served on the board, the South Dakota Art Museum board, in the 70s and 80s. Eric and Ruth Brown donation also includes 3 works by Herman Red Elk, which I believe are also included in this exhibition. It's a very handsome piece. It's that 1968 style. And I bet Jody will find a way to use it soon. Joe Stewart. Joe Stewart was the director for the Art Center for almost 21 years. This piece, and practicing artist, but really started practicing more after his retirement. This piece, Warm Gray Duel, number 2, it's acrylic, enamel, and sand on panel. It's a gift of the Joseph and Signe Stewart collection. Joe Stewart passed away in 2016. He was the director of South Dakota Art Museum from 1971 to 1993. Works by Billy Apple, John Banasiak, Arlene Becker, and Signe Stewart are also included in this exhibition. All works were part of the Stewart gift from their personal collection. The keenest way I've heard Joe Stewart be described, and I don't mean this to be funny, but it was in his obituary. It was written that Joe appreciated art in all forms and was a champion of modern and contemporary art, working to create opportunities for regional artists wherever he worked. And that was so true if you look back at Joe's time at the museum. I've always believed that South Dakota Art Museum in South Dakota was so fortunate to have had Joe Stewart in the captain's seat during its maiden years. He was not the first director of the Art Center, but he was on board by its second year and remained there for the next 21 years. He scratched every aspect of the museum's operations. Besides done, he immediately began building the historical and contemporary and Native American 2D and 3D art collections. Joe developed a base for collecting works on paper, works on canvas, photographs, prints, mixed mediums, and of course, Fibo arts. The Margab story is a one-of-a-kind story. Personally, I guided my understanding of museum missions and goals and ethics of museum operations by Joe's actions. I was so pleased that I was able to have him as a mentor in my development as a museum director. Stewart always looked for a balance in the exhibition programs that would address a variety of subjects and materials and purposely address cultural and gender exposure. He would always note, it's the museum's job to tell the artist's story the best we can. It's a line I used on myself many years putting together exhibitions. His own works spoke for less is more theory, minimalist in nature. This particular piece actually says more than many of his pieces. The texture adds to the statement. Perhaps you can't tell much about that by looking at the piece through the slide. But really, once you've broken the surface, the story begins. So in addition to the Joe Stewart piece, we have a Signe Stewart piece that came with this collection. Signe Stewart, this piece is called PM. from the gift of the Joseph and Signe. Signe's accomplishments and influences in the art department of SDSU have been remarkable. Stewart was professor of art at SDSU from 1972 to 1994. It's hard to remember how things were in the early 70s. And if I remember this correctly, it was into the early 70s that women's names were first being included in the art history, Janssen Art History Museum, art history books. And women were not being included in exhibitions or even thought of in museum world or museum collections as on a regular basis, at least. And so there's a forefront time, and Stewart came into the faculty of SDSU art department at that time. Women were speaking out and demanding to be heard by the museum world. And with all that, Signe was producing art, a producing artist, and an inspiring faculty member. In fact, we have a faculty member, or we have a board member now who's on the collection committee, who's I think one of South Dakota's better known, best landscape painters, and that's Dorothy Morgan. And Dorothy Morgan often states how important Signe Stewart was to her training when she was at SDSU. Signe worked with sewn and stained canvases in the 60s, construction works on paper in the 80s, painted scrolls and discovered new materials in the 90s to 2020. Stewart's works were often large hanging wall pieces or walk-through installations. Signe has been recognized through many prestigious awards, solo exhibitions, and residencies. It is this review by Laura Reuter, then director of the North Dakota Museum of Art, that I thought described Signe's works best. Reuter wrote, Stewart became known for her superb instinct for color, for her tendency for sparseness, and then, hers is a work of connections. As a painter, personally, as a painter, to have someone say that you have a superb instinct of color, that just seals the day. You can go take a nap. It's just a wonderful thing to have had said for yourself. Signe is still producing work today out in her studio in Santa Fe, always reaching out to and looking for yet another way, perhaps, to address the world of nature. Okay, let's move on to Carol Hepper. I was saddened when I learned about Carol Hepper's passing. Carol Hepper is another nationally known South Dakota artist and SDSU graduate. This piece is called Twisted Chamber. Twisted Chamber is one of 3 early sculptures donated to the permanent collection by the artist's sister, Gail Bond, in 2017. Hepper passed away in April of 2021. Carol grew up in a ranch near McLaughlin, South Dakota, on the Standing Rock Indian Reservation. She was a graduate of SDSU and most noted from that time as a student of sculptor faculty member Don Boyd, who was there from 74 to 78. He served as director of a Fluxus West movement from 75 to 2015, and his purpose was for inspiring new generations of artists to carry on the Fluxus movement. So in short, the Fluxus movement emphasizes the artist's process over the finished product. It's the process getting to that art piece, encouraging different artists to use different mediums and different disciplines for generating new art forms. So Don Boyd and Dana Crooks, Tom Thorson, Dwayne Scamp, and Hepper all exhibited their work in 1982 at the Mercy Street Gallery Show in New York, New York, called the South Dakota Experimental Artists. It was exciting. And they were the talk of the town. It should be noted that, in my mind, it should be noted that Signe Stewart was also a faculty member during Hepper's training. And I mention that because I believe one can see the influence of both Boyd and Stewart in Hepper's early works. Hepper moved to New York and set up a studio. Her work was shown nationally and internationally and is represented in the collection of the Guggenheim Museum, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Museum of Modern Art, the Walker Art Center, among many others, and the South Dakota Art Museum. The museum is now in the process of trying to collect parts of the works or the works of each of the artists that was in that exhibition of the South Dakota Experimental Artist Exhibition in New York. I tell a fun story from when I was working at the museum, and that I was sent off to the ranch way up north. It was so far up north of South Dakota that when we went into the big barn where all the crates were that the art was in, I went up to the loft area to look out the window. If you looked out the window, you could see North Dakota. I swear you could see North Dakota and Canada. That's how far north it was. But the little bit hairy part of that story is that the loft area was full of straw, hay, and we climbed up this ladder. In fact, my assistant at the time climbed up the ladder in front of me, and when she got up to the top of the ladder to look out that window, she got a little surprised, and that a big snake then came out and looked at her, and then she slid down that ladder so fast. But and then that's all a part of being a curator for a museum, the fun parts that you get to do. I think that, and I think I want to say one more part to that, and that I think Carol Hepper has an amazing career, and that it's our job as a museum to help artists become to get their due credit. And I think that this is one of those cases where we need to, and I believe we are trying to do a better job at speaking out and informing the rest of the world about Carol Hepper, because she did do a wonderful job and wonderful things during her career. And another amazing effect on the South Dakota Art Museum was former director Lynn Verschure. Lynn Verschure was the director of the South Dakota Art Museum for the last 20 years, retired in 2019. Not only did she bring a strong educational program to the museum, her influence is seen across the board, especially in the Fine Arts department. She built a professional staff, leaving the institution with an excellent reputation. So the next two works were purchases in honor of Lynn and what she had done for the museum. The first piece that you're going to see is by Keith Braveheart, 200 Horse Giveaway. This piece was, the unique contribution to this is that the Art Center, I keep calling it the Art Center. It used to be the South Dakota Memorial Arts Center, and now it's the South Dakota Art Museum. So forgive me for that slip. The Art Museum has a wonderful organization called the Guild, the Museum Guild. And the Guild is an auxiliary group that provides support to the museum through invaluable services of hours and financial support. A support of their membership dues, or a portion of their membership dues, supports the Arts Acquisition Fund. So every year, the Guild graciously works with the staff to buy a purchase a piece to go into the collection. Yeah, Jody, perhaps sometimes we'll have to do an exhibition. Maybe you've already done this, of all the pieces over time that have been donated by the the Guild. Sorry, shouldn't be discussing things brainstorming out loud. This work was purchased by the Guild in honor of Lynn Brochure upon her retirement as the director. It was known by the staff that Lynn loved Braveheart's work, and the wheels start turning. Braveheart is Lakota. He is a very thoughtful young man who has a great interest in his heritage and their Lakota art. His acknowledging his elders' art is important to his own artistic development, and his artwork always speaks to the Lakota way. If you get a chance, Google Braveheart and listen to some of his speak on the chat. You'll find a very interesting guy to listen to. The other gift that was given in the celebration of Lynn's leaving, that didn't sound right, is a piece by Greta Bodegard called Badlands. This is a large weaving. It's a gift. And this is an example of how gifts can get tangled. This is a gift of friends in honor of Lynn Brochure, and gift of Greta from Greta's son, daughter, and granddaughter, Eric Hikas, Catherine Hikas, and Suni Hikas Napton. Sorry, in memory of Greta Bodegard. So it's in memory of Bodegard, a gift towards the purchase of honoring Lynn for her time served at the Art Center. Bodegard, an already established weaver, immigrated from Norway to Vermilion in 1969. She developed a variety of South Dakota landscapes and spent time living in both the eastern and western part of the state. With a broad overview of her pieces, you will find that her works depict the story of South Dakota. Her landforms, contours, colors, textures, and sometimes even small intimate details of nature all represent South Dakota. Sometimes her weavings aren't measured in inches, but by feet, and that references to a piece that's in the collection up in Brookings, in Sioux Falls at the Pavilion, because there's a piece they have there that represents the 4 seasons, and I believe that piece is about 16 feet long. She's a wonderful weaver. She was a wonderful weaver. The story tells of an art form, so we're going to talk about S.D. Nelson. I fell in love with these pieces by S.D. Nelson, another nice young man. Nelson's is a Standing Rock Lakota. There's 3 pieces that came with this donation, this gift, and this gift was from the artist following an exhibition. This is Beyond the Many Stars. The next 2 pieces, you want to flip the next slide, please. The next 2 pieces is Bus Stop and 5 Chant, number 2. And again, these pieces were donated to the museum in 2019, following an exhibition that he had at the Art Center, or excuse me, at the museum. Nelson is an author of children's books, a teacher, a painter, and an illustrator. A member of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe in the Dakotas, he says his people are known as Sioux or Lakota, and that his ancestors are an important part of his storytelling. Through his children's books, his paintings offers a fresh, contemporary interpretation of traditional Lakota images. He has a bright and colorful, fluid style. Embedded are the stories of his elders. And I just need to note that the Beyond the Stars and 5 Chant 2 are illustrations from Walking on Earth, and that Bus Stop is an illustration from for Greet the Down. I understand that Nelson was inspired by the works of Paul Goebel, and that in to honor that connection, the museum featured both artists at the same time. That was a nice job. I'm going to slip into collections that are coming out of Aberdeen. The next couple of works are, and I have to make a point to tell people that if you take note, there's a lot of artists still living in South Dakota, working in South Dakota, who are artists out of Aberdeen. James Gibson, Dakota Highways. Dave Arlt is a designer and former owner of Interior Design Concepts in Aberdeen, South Dakota, and serves on the South Dakota Art Museum board as an advisor. The Arnts were collecting works, running their business, but also collecting artworks at the same time. And they became, to my understanding, friends with so many of the artists there, which is just a grand thing that they collected all these pieces of art. Gibson taught for 29 years at Northern State University. Before he retired in 1994, the first half of his career was as a painter, printmaker, and department chair. In the second half, he turned his energies into computer art and animation. He was a memorable instructor. I had him myself for my brief time at Northern, giving instructions, but he was good at giving instruction, but leaving it to you, the student, to play it out. I found his work to be thoughtful and silent with questions. Other Aberdeen artists, by the way, top of my head, James Groth, George Prisby, Mary Groth, Carol Ryan, Nancy Losacker, John Richtrick, myself, Mark McGinnis, Sam McGinnis. Okay, I'll move on. George Prisby, and there's any others out there that I haven't named, hey, just call in. Say, hey, I'm from Aberdeen. George Prisby also had gone through Aberdeen. George makes it clear that he is an artist that draws his inspiration from the South Dakota landscape, Dakota Totalism series. He says he collects imagery as he travels through the state. His goal is to travel every road on the map of South Dakota. That's interesting. I have several friends who have this as a goal, and they're almost there. I love the story he tells of when his interest of landscape developed. One day when he was in graduate school, he received a postcard from South Dakota bearing the image of Harvey Dunn painting. Isn't that fun? We got to do a circle there, bearing the image of a Harvey Dunn painting. He says he was instantly filled with longing and a new appreciation for his homeland. Prior to this, Prisby says he had been actively trying to distance himself from his Midwest ethics that his professors had labeled him with. Prisby is recently has been working with a movement called tonalism. It is a movement from back in the 1880s to the 1920s era of American artists, when the artists began to paint landscapes from a form with a overall tone of colored, atmospheric, or of a mist. And this is a good example of tonalism. This piece expresses some of the qualities. It's intimate, it's moody, it has soft edges. I liked this new direction of George's. I've liked George's works for all the years all the things he's done. But I'm particularly fond of this particular style that he's working in now. Another Aberdeen artist, Mark Shakor. This donation comes from a gift of Bernard and Marcella Gerber, Dr. Gerber, entitled piece. It's ceramic. There's 9 pieces in the exhibition, and there's a little detail there that shows you all the pieces. Dr. Sikora was a faculty member in Aberdeen. Is the I don't know what, I mean, I've lost track of his years. When is that? Into 2017, I think. No, that's not right. I'll get back to that. Dr. Gerber and Marcella Gerber were longtime residents of Aberdeen, where Dr. Gerber practiced medicine for over 30 years and had a distinguished career as an educator and public servant. They purchased this work from an exhibition of Sikora's in 2017. Then their whole collection was dedicated to the permanent collection. Sikora taught painting and ceramics at Northern. Now retired from the faculty, he still produces his ceramic works. You can find them on the internet, and he has a gallery that represents them that you can pick pieces up from. The next slide is an artist, Tim Peterson. And I think this is fun because this is yet one more new direction of the type of ways the works come into the Art Center's collection. Sorry, I'm getting tight on time here for you. Tim Peterson's roadside attraction is the South Dakota Art Museum purchase with funding provided by the South Dakota Arts Council. This is through the governor's show. The South Dakota Governor's Show has a nice catalog that goes with it, and it features artists from South Dakota, and they do an exhibition every year, and that's coordinated by 4 different museums. This work was included in the governor's 8th biannual art exhibition, and the show will the exhibits are hosted and they will be featured in all 4 shows throughout the year, or excuse me, all 4 institutions throughout the year. Peterson calls himself a full-time fine and commercial artist. He states, over my career, the work has divided itself into few distinct categories: figurative, nocturne, and plein air. And often they are overlapping, and that's fine. That's what happens, right? He says about his nocturne series, I'm attracted to the nocturne for the number of reasons. The high contrast of saturated color on the dark field of visually appealing to me as an artist is visually appealing to me as an artist. The static quality of a night scene offers a solitude that daylight does not permit in the same setting. I find that nocturnes have a film noir feeling with its implied mysteries and or scenes of danger that heightens my awareness. It's a lovely piece. And again, it's one of those, when you walk into the gallery, you're immediately attracted to this piece because of what he had addressed here, in that high contrast. This brings you right into a piece. And then as you dig into it, you realize, oh my goodness, it's a night scene. Oh, I see. Yeah. And so it's truly one of those pieces. It's pastel on paper, 2018. So it is an hour has passed, and I'm going to, I guess, close my moment here and let the staff come in and fill in the blanks. Sorry for the timeline.
Oh, Sheila, you have no apologies to make. You just did a great job, and we are so grateful for all of this wonderful information that you shared, me particularly being new to the area and to many of these South Dakota artists. So we are going to go ahead and open the floor now for questions, and you'll see that Taylor and Jody are pinned here too to answer questions. And I've been able to link in the chat exhibition text that Sheila was referring to that was on the brochure that Jody wrote is actually on the website. So you can follow that link if you'd like to read it. And so what questions might we have?
You covered it all, Sheila.
I have a comment.
Either that or they've all fallen asleep.
I've got a comment. And that is that I'm delighted to see that the museum now has a wonderful Harvey Dunn nude. I've been hoping that the museum would be able to purchase one for several years now. And I think it's absolutely great that one just happened to drop into the museum's arms. I mean, and it's a super nude, and Harvey Dunn does some great nudes, but the preceding ones that the museum has, in my estimation, are not especially wonderful, but this one is.
We've been fortunate to have several nudes land in our lap from him in recent years.
Just
So it's
recently, yeah.
great. Yeah. I mean, how many just recently? The one from Peggy Miller, and then several sketches from the family recently
Right.
came our way. So
Yeah.
they really did help round out that area of his production for us, for sure. And we didn't have to purchase. So again, so fortunate to have so many wonderful people who think of us
Right.
with those gifts.
Jody did a smart thing in the All Done gallery, and she tucked all of the nudes kind of around a corner as you walk in. It's
It's a
it's a
little
fun
bit of the
little-
naughty corner,
Yeah.
you know.
so
You can avoid it if you want to.
Yeah.
You cannot avoid the nude in the recent acquisition show. I kind of just landed that right out there in front of everything.
And that, I think that's just dandy. It's and if you look at that slide of the recent acquisitions, you'll see that there are lots of pieces in that show that I just didn't get to tonight. But by 9 o'clock, everyone would be in their pajamas. So the best way to cover that is to go to and see the exhibition.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have to have cocktails again,
There's,
the rest of them. And Sheila, you did a really great job of putting this together, a tremendous amount of work.
yeah.
Well, thank you. It is fun to see the threads. I love connecting the dots and the ties of one person, the faculty, another person is a student, and another student connects to that faculty, and then South Dakota gets tied in across this nation, and it's there's stories to be told.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the thing that the staff does such a wonderful job at, bringing together these pieces. All these pieces in this show will show up in exhibits down the road, and sometimes they'll show up in ways you would like, really? Because Jody does that all the time. Like, really? Wouldn't have thought of that one, And it's just a delightful way of creating new intersections, as she puts it. Yeah.
Well, I love it when we get a piece that I can immediately see there are multiple spokes coming out from the center that it is. So that's really exciting for me when we're reviewing things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes a piece you're looking at it and in itself isn't a star piece of what we know that artist from, but sometimes it's those pieces that are one tick off that help make the story a better developed story of understanding the artist. And sometimes I think the team actually looks for the pieces that are one tick off.
Mm-hmm.
How many pieces do you collect a year, and how much room do you have down there?
No more room.
Not enough room. Space is at a premium. It really depends on the year. Last year, we just looked at those numbers too. I think last year oh, was it close to 30 pieces? It
It
really
can really
Yeah.
vary so
Um,
much.
Yeah, it just depends on what opportunities come up. So,
Well, and sometimes you'll have like an acquisition like the Cockerline collection where you're getting hundreds of pieces.
right. Or
When
the
we did
Woodland
the
collection, which, is now at 108 pieces.
right.
So,
When we did the 50 Works for 50 Years show, there were usually plenty to choose from for each year. I think there was one year we literally had one acquisition that year.
yeah.
Right, so I think that what we had determined prior to the board meeting is that we had acquired over 200 pieces over the last 5 years. So,
That's the number I was looking for,
Sounds
yeah.
right. Yep. Yeah.
And this show really was, I've been thinking about recent acquisitions for a long time, really since I started here, but I was finding good ways to make use out of a lot of our recent acquisitions in other shows I've curated recently. So I was really strategic with this show to put out pieces that I hadn't shown in some other collections exhibition in the last handful of years. So there weren't repeats. But some artists maybe were in other shows and I chose a different work purposefully for that.
Yeah.
Anybody have
Yeah.
questions about it? Any tough question that you can ask staff about the artist?
Well, Nico Lee had a question. I
Not really a
wanted to
tough
know,
question. Not really a tough question, but a thank you for a job well done, Sheila. Appreciate it very, very much.
Oh, well, thank you.
I'll leave the tough questions to some other people.
Oh, I
Can you
see.
hear me from Arizona?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, he, isn't it?
Okay.
Yep.
Hi there, everybody. Well, you had me on mute, I think. I don't believe I put myself on mute, but I'm still trying to get over, and you'll have to rewind to hear what Jody said about the Harvey Dunn nude landing in her lap and how thrilled she was by that. And I have to tell you, I likewise would have been thrilled. Well, it's a real honor to be a part of this exhibition, and the slide that you showed at the beginning, Sheila, was quite wonderful. And you do have a great open space gallery. I wish I could physically be there, but it's good to do Zoom.
Yeah. We'll send you
Well-
a couple different shots, SD, so you can.
Yeah,
see
well,
more.
and thank you for all of those pieces. I mean, that was such a fun show to be so intentional about curating with you, and then to have all of those works are such a good representative sampling of pieces of yours. So thank you for your gift, for sure.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. And it was especially nice to be exhibiting with Paul Goebel. I'm a big fan of his.
SD, I have to tell you that, I love those pieces. They're so magical and the students really love them. And I've had such a great job doing visual thinking strategies with students when they've come in to see those, to ask them what they see in them. And your book's lovely. And thank you for being part of this exhibit and also for your donation.
Thank you.
and I'd also say your work will be featured in our tourism guide ads and probably other ads, because Fire Chant 2 just is so beautiful and looks nice with,
Thank you, Carolyn.
with our new fun colors. So watch for that.
Did you have any writing questions?
Lenico was asking about whether the museum provides story briefs on each of the exhibits for viewed visitors, so something beyond the museum brochure.
For the most part, it's that, so that the brochures will repeat the text that's on the main interpretive text panel for the show. And then, so we have the brochure, the text panel in person, and then that's all online too. But it will depend on the show, how much interpretive text we can include in it or not. So it varies. I don't know if there's something specific you mean by that, but I would love to be able to thoroughly outline all of these interweavings like Sheila did in a program. Sometimes that's best to, like in an oral storytelling kind of tradition. That's why it was so nice to have Sheila come in and point out some of these kinds of connections that are in there.
Okay, well, I think I'd just like to say thank you to everyone tonight for your questions, and to Sheila, of course, and the rest of the team for chatting with us tonight. But before we go, we'd like to give a shout out to the artists and donors who joined us tonight, whose gifts are in the exhibit. But as Sheila mentioned, we unfortunately did not have time to share them all. So Taylor's got some slides for us. And if there are no further questions, we'll have a look at those. So thank you very much to Ann Seaman Dustin for the gift of Charles Greener's 2 untitled studies from Needles Highway. I particularly love this one because I just went through Needles Highway for the first time. And to the family of Eleanor Castleman Small for the gift of Inspiration Point Near Top of Redwater Hill by Eleanor Castleman Small. And many thanks to John Anderson for gifting the Badlands. And to Sharon Cutler and the Richard Cutler Fund for helping us acquire Rabbit Before Horses Strickland's Allegory of Nations. And we also want to acknowledge the artist for that, for helping make that purchase possible. And to Jim and Gloria, thank you very much for this untitled work by Paul Warcloud, which was my nephew's favorite piece when he visited the museum.
And that is.
And that is all. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Before we go, we just want to give, and thank you, Anne. I see your chat message, and that's wonderful. We're glad you feel that way. Standing ovation, Sheila, you just can't tell. And we hope everyone has enjoyed this cocktail chat, and we hope to
Thank
see
you.
you on October 14th. And to please come see these wonderful pieces in person. We hope to see you at the museum. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Sheila.
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks all.